Cool. I have to press a button at some point. Let me just see. Okay, we've got to go live here. This is how it is when you don't have like a studio, Mickael. You have to do everything yourself. Okay, welcome everybody to Founders Focus. This is episode 3, the show where we get up close and personal with the leaders of the HR tech companies that are changing the way in which we work. I'm delighted to welcome you all to episode 3. We've got loads of leaders lining up to do this. It's been a fascinating series so far. And it's really exciting to be having a chat with this gentleman later in a moment. But a few sound check issues before we kick off. We are on Crowdcast, LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, I believe Periscope also. So we need to just make sure everyone can hear us okay. If that is the case, please do let us know. Can you hear us, everybody, in those channels? If you can, just say yes, no, maybe. That would be good for me to be aware of. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got some messages coming through, which is really good. I can see we're live on LinkedIn as well, which is also good. We should be ready to go. Okay, so we have Mickael Cabrol, should I say? Oh my goodness, Cabron is potentially a very rude word in Spanish, I believe.
You're right. So you speak Spanish, but you're right. Yeah.
We were immediately not safe for work tag onto this video. And who is the EMEA MD of iCIMS and very recently and previously the CEO of EASYRECRUE. So, Mickael, welcome to the show. Great to see you. First things first, what did you have to cancel in order to appear on Founders Focus today? You're a busy leader of a tech company. You have no time for this.
I have always time for you, Hung. So, we used to meet previously, so it was a pleasure to accept this invitation. Normally, to be honest with you, on Tuesday noon, I try to do some sport. Twice a week, I try to do some sport during lunchtime. So, but I will do that tomorrow. So
this is really interesting straight away because the idea of taking a conscious break during your day, I know a lot of professionals have a problem with that. Business leaders in particular have a problem with this because everyone feels like they need to work 26 hours a day. But you're saying you have time in the week to do sport, and you carve the time out. You make the space to happen.
Yeah, I make possible to have time to do sport in the week because I think it's important for me, and I think this is a good balance, between being focused on the work and have some time for myself too. And this is something I'm doing since 5 or 6 years, and it didn't prevent me to do stuff and grow the company. So I think it can work. Yeah, I
think very positive actually, because your body and mind are not separate. They work in synchronicity, don't they? If you neglect one, the other will also be damaged, I think.
I think so. I mean, on a short-term period, you can be just focusing on your work and many hours per day. But I mean, I also always say that it's not a sprint, it's a kind of marathon. If you want to be successful at the end, you need to be consistent, and if you don't balance yourself and your body, you're going to issue at the end. So this is a way I found to be more involved. I mean, in what I do is to find the right balance between the sports, my family, and the work. Yeah.
Can you tell us what sport? What is the thing you do?
I'm trying to do some tennis and gym.
Yeah, cool. Tennis is, I don't know, it seems like I have a very good friend of mine who's also French, not to say, hey, this is a big stereotype, but he is a great tennis player. So for some reason, when you said sport, I immediately heard the accent and I thought, yeah, maybe Mickael is also a tennis player.
I'm not a great tennis player. I'm a regular tennis player. I'm not a player, but I'm not a great player. But it just help to do some sport. Yeah,
fantastic. Mickael, let's deal with sort of one of the big pressing questions. Is obviously very exciting year for you personally and all of the team because of the big announcement earlier when the pinnacle of any startup maybe to connect and ultimately join a big business like iCIMS. And that happened. So give us a quick overview of this, because people I think might want to hear it from the leader of the business. Like what happened earlier this year, and when did it all occur?
Yeah, so we did this operation later last year. I mean, it was back in November last year. It was 4 months ago tomorrow, I think. So it was 4 months ago, and the process started for us back in early 2020. So we started to work with some banker, okay, and because the EASYRECRUE was growing well, we did some positioning choice and some international choice that made it happen. So the company were doing well. And we were thinking about doing a new fundraising process, so Series C, so raising between $30 to $40 million, or join forces with a bigger player. So it was the two options we have in mind. We launched the process in February, and 2 weeks later we had to cancel it because of the lockdown and everything. So we called the banker and said, okay, we are not in position to do the process now, so we just stepped down and we're going to see. And finally, in March, April, May, it went pretty well for us at EASYRECRUE because, of course, a lot of customers called us to say, okay, we're not going to recruit anymore, so we're going to cancel everything and we're going to talk later. But a lot of them called us to say, okay, we need more licenses because we're continuing to recruit, and we need to do that remotely. We need digital tools to recruit people per video, digital testing, etc. So at the end, we did our plan in Q2, and we said, okay, I think we are helping companies in this moment, so we need to continue to accelerate. So we're starting again the process, and we met iCIMS in July. First meeting with iCIMS in July. It went pretty fast, and in September, October, we had a few options on the table, either on the strategic side and on the fundraising side. And finally, we had really interesting discussion with iCIMS when we thought that the project was really interesting for us, because it was compelling building the product because they didn't have a product. So the goal was to do 1 + 1 and having 3, the products. It was the first interesting point for me. And the second point was the compelling momentum for EMEA, because iCIMS was in its process to internationalize the company. EMEA was in the plan. So it was a good momentum for everybody. So that's why we move forward with iCIMS.
Yeah, perfect. So basically, there was a product fit in the sense that the strengths of EASYRECRUE complemented the strengths of iCIMS, and also market positioning, like in terms of, EASYRECRUE's obviously strength in France and in Europe, and this combines obviously with the global sort of coverage that iCIMS have as well. So those
exactly.
two things.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it was a good match. Yeah.
Yep. Fantastic. Can I ask, when did you know? Mickael, so you're having these conversations. You mentioned there was a number of options, right? You know, there's lots of choices to make. This is like the critical thing for a CEO. Like, you got great choices. How do you make between A+ and A++? Like, how do you do it? When did you know that this was the right move to make? Was there a moment?
Yeah, I think one of the tipping point was the discussion I had with the CEO of iCIMS, Steve Luca. So I think you did interview him,
yes,
too. And Steve he has a lot of energy, commitment, involvement, and I just saw the picture, and I just saw that at that time that I would learn a lot of things, and that my legacy people at EASYRECRUE would land in a good house. For me, it was super important to be sure that for them the opportunity would be good too. And with the first discussion we had and so on, it was really clear that it could be a good fit. So it helps me a lot to take this decision. And so far, I think this is the best decision we took for the future of the company. So I think it was good. Yeah.
It's interesting because obviously EASYRECRUE, iCIMS, all of us are working in what we hope to be like a very data-driven and scientific way to make decisions on, who do we actually connect with and end up working with and so forth. But I do wonder at some point, like at what point does like the basic chemistry between people actually have a huge impact also? Because meeting with the CEO, meeting with Steve and you, the two leaders of the business, like that chemistry has to be right, doesn't it? I mean, you can't just look at a spreadsheet or look at, a roadmap and think, okay, that's fine. You also got to like humanly connect with.
I think it's key. All the Branker EMEA team did that job just to ensure that the numbers were okay and that we had a rationale behind the margin. But at the end, the call was key. It was supposed to be a 30-minute call, introduction call. And finally, we spent 2 hours on Zoom just speaking about the market, the opportunity, our life. And I think it went really well. And I think it was a tipping point for me, perhaps for him too, to say, okay, there is something to do together.
Amazing. And also the idea that it's coming from a remote conversation, right? I mean, 12 months ago, it would be unthinkable to not meet the person.
Look, it's just crazy because we never met anybody at iCIMS so far. We did all the process on Zoom for the moment, and we never met. We didn't have the opportunity to go in the US, in the New Jersey, to meet the team, and they couldn't come in Paris just to meet us. So it's just crazy. When you think about it, we did this kind of operation, which is a big one for everybody, but we never met. So hopefully we're going to meet in June or July this year. But it's just crazy.
But it's also a demo as to what can be achieved, right? As you say, 12 months ago, that would be crazy, totally unthinkable to make it. If you try to make a decision without meeting people like that, I'm sure your investors will be thinking, what the hell are you doing? Get on a plane. But now it's like, obviously you can do this. And then it's become a case where maybe in future, this is how it's going to be. Like, you can make big decisions. You can do all the necessary due diligence without actually the physical proximity. So I think a big signal into the market in general, Let's have a look at this market, Mickael, because obviously you mentioned during the pandemic, you had a big spike of like companies. Actually, two things happened, right? Two trends. Companies saying, listen, we're slowing down, we're stopping. And then another bunch of people saying, yo, we're going nuts. We need more. This movement to the digital side, this huge shift to remote. What have you seen in terms of general patterns? I'm interested in particular about regional difference, regional variance. And also industry sector variance. Do you see any patterns there, Mickael?
Yeah. If I speak about EMEA, but I think it is the same trend in the US. The first conclusion coming from recruiters and TA team is that we won't have any comeback. We're not going to come back to the previous world and to our previous habits once everybody will get vaccinated. Things have changed forever. And in the recruitment space, our customers are saying, okay, before we used to do 20 to 30% of the recruitment process digitally. Okay, so the first screening process and then perhaps something, and then we ask a candidate to come on board. During the pandemic and still now, we do 100% of the process digitally because we can't ask the candidate to come on board. And they think that later, next year, they're going to do 70% of the process digitally and 30% of the process, in the office of face-to-face. So I think the process has evolved dramatically, and we won't have any comeback. So I think this is the first important thing that we have achieved. I think another change that we see is the company has realized, and they are forced to that they have a lot of talent internally. Because they have more restrictions than they used to have regarding the recruitment process, so they can't hire as much of people as they would like because they have some restrictions. So they're just thinking, okay, if I can't hire externally, can I find people internally? And they just realize that it works. Okay, because they used to think that it was better to look outside the company than inside. They just realize that inside they have a lot of talents. They just have to improve them to do some reskilling program, upskilling program, but it works. And we see this trend particularly in the bank or finance industry. In the banking industry, they just realize that the people working in the agency, in the street, is not the future. In 5 or 10 years, we won't have a banker in the street. We're going to have the banker online on Zoom. So they just realize that. So they're going to switch dramatically on this aspect. And they're not going to hire only new people to do this job. They're going to train the people working in agency to do this job. So there is a shift. And it's about strategic workforce planning and upskilling programs. So this is something we see now on the market, and this is one of the biggest trends we see today.
There was a really interesting, I don't know whether you saw it, Mickael, but a fairly short report by McKinsey who kind of did a scorecard on proximity. So they broke down job categories in terms of the requirement for physical proximity for that particular category of job. And that in itself might determine like how aggressively remote you can be. Because certain jobs might require in-person presence. This person needs to be there. That's the function of it. Let's say a nurse or something, the person has to be there. But actually maybe not with telemedicine these days, but, all these types of things.
To get vaccinated, you need to have someone to do the vaccine, I think. You can do that on Zoom. Yeah.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. I think there are robots that do this.
Really? Okay.
I think so. I think I was in Korea where there is literally a robot that sticks this thing in you. And you think, yeah, maybe that's the safest way in the end. But the proximity is going to be very interesting to analyze, like which jobs require this person to be there and which jobs can be pushed remotely. Big impact to the marketplace. Before we actually talk about sort of how you think it impacts EasyRecruit, because that's going to be an interesting phenomena. Like, which jobs do you think can be done remotely? Which jobs do you think cannot be done as remotely as effectively? And how does it affect from a leadership side? Because, I asked Steve the same question, because previously as a leader, you're going to be in meetings like all day, right? That's the idea. You're meant to be like constantly in this, and you have a management team, and I'm sure you're obviously in physical proximity with those folks in the before times, but now that is not the case. So how do you see the shape of your business unit as we come out of this pandemic?
Yeah. So we are here to acknowledge that everybody can work remotely, because it used to work. I mean, since 1 year at EasyRecruE and at iCIMS, people are working remotely. So now we are starting to get a bit more hybrid, because some people in France say that they can't work from home anymore because they have the kids, they have not enough space, or they want to go back to work. So we organize a kind of rotation. So there is 10% of the staff that can come to work and they have to register themselves. So we start to organize that, to make people more confident about that. But we just have to prove that working remotely can work for everybody. I think, on our case, it's not really, I wouldn't do a split per kind of job. I think that all kind of job can work remotely. Perhaps I do a split per kind of seniority. I think it's harder for a junior person who just arrived. I mean, they say it is, his intern, it's his first job. I think it's harder for him or her to work from home during 2 months without any contact. I think it's harder. So for this kind of person, I would suggest when we'll be able to go back to work, to prioritize their revenue, because they need to have a kind of frame, to work effectively. I think it's less the case for more senior people, more seasoned people, that can work from home in an easiest way.
You know what? You've just isolated, I think, a really important phenomena, which is the early entry talent. So much of the learning is actually based on at desk learning. You're listening to people, you're watching people, you do work shadow, all of this type of stuff. It helps educate you on how working is. I remember when I left university, for instance, no way was I capable of working in any condition without that process before you were competent, right? So, very interesting. Maybe the on-premise will be predominantly entry talent at some point. And as you say, mature or increase your tenure in the business, you can actually then move further away from the home office. So fascinating phenomenon. Going back to regional sort of analysis on this, Mickael, do you see any regional variance in terms of how what the appetite is for remote, hybrid, on-premise? Is there any differences, for instance, let's say in France compared to other markets that you're aware of, or is there any industry-specific stuff that is worth bearing in mind?
No, I mean in Europe, the constraint we have. Today we have some location in France, Spain, Italy, Dubai, and the UK, and I think that the policy about remote work, hybrid, or full remote, I don't know, will depend on the health and sanitary situation. So I think this is what is going to impact the trend on that. I think that we see that companies in the US are perhaps more rigorous about the fact to work remotely for the moment until everybody gets vaccinated. I think that in Latin countries, perhaps we want to have more flexibility about the fact of coming back to work as soon as possible. Perhaps this is something we can see here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like, I think globally there's going to be variance for various reasons. Yeah, like you can see in Asia Pacific, for instance, I think they're more or less back to the office, perhaps because their lockdown was like really sharp and early, and they didn't go to this oscillating experience of in and out and back again. We talked about how that's actually like stressing a steel bar. At some point that's not that very healthy for the condition of that bar. So better to commit one way or the other. Let's have a look at a little bit in terms of the sort of the integration, if you will, of your business now with iCIMS. How has your job changed, Mickael, since you became part of a bigger unit? I mean, is there any like day-to-day things that you suddenly noticed? Oh, that's changed for me, because you've been like,
for sure. No, yeah, there's a lot of things changing, but I really see the opportunity to personally. But if we speak about things that are changing, as a CEO of a company, you run basically all the aspects of the company, because you're involved in the product, in the tech, in the G&A, in the finance, in the HR, in the sales, marketing. So you have the executive team reporting to you, and you handle all the part of the business. So you have a large scope. Today, I'm managing director for iCIMS in EMEA, and my role is really to develop a business here in EMEA, to develop a presence here in EMEA, and my role is more oriented around sales, go-to-market, marketing, and I'm a bit less involved for sure on the product or tech aspect, which relies to the US and the corp. So this is the change. About my perimeter. And the other thing I think is about, an important thing for me and for the US is to have the good relationship and the good way to do some reporting, and it's super important for me to give visibility, more visibility than I used to do with my board, for instance. So this is something that is evolving too, because for the US, it's super important to know what is happening and to understand. And for me, it's super important to give this visibility too. So this is the two many aspects that are changing in my world today.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm going to ask you a tough question, Mickael. You can opt out of this one, okay? Everything else you have to answer, but this one is a little bit controversial. So I would say US business culture and French business culture both have like stereotypical reputations. People like immediately imagine, oh yeah, US companies like this. And they also imagine, oh yeah, French company, of course. It's like this. Is that the case? And how does that marriage work? I mean, have you sensed, okay, here's culturally big difference. And actually, this is what we've got to do to get over it.
There is some cultural difference between the US company and the French company. But the good thing today in the process is that they really respect, the US company really respects the process of French company, and they know that they won't be able to move to the US process. If a company is really serious about getting international, they need to respect international constraints, let's say, or international culture. And there is some footprints, some cultural things for France, other one for UK, other one for APAC, other one for MENA, other one for LATAM, and so on. So, all the US companies which are successful globally, they've managed to respect this local aspect, and we're in this process. And our goal, my goal, is to help the US company to understand what is the French characteristic, the Spanish characteristic, and it goes very well. And they don't see that as a constraint; they just see that as an opportunity too. We talk initially before the beginning of the podcast about the good life balance. And there is some stereotype in the US and in France, and this is something where we can put things on the table to show that there is another way to organize the lifestyle balance, and this is something they are really open to. Okay, so I think that it works in both sides, and on our side, the fact to be perhaps more rigorous, following the process, following the forecast, kind of stuff. This is something where we were not that used, and it's super interesting for us too. So there is a lot to learn from both sides.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I think very enriching potentially, right? I think both sides are kind of open to the idea of information flow, and the attitude is to learn and to figure it out. Then that's where the opportunity of enrichment can emerge. Yeah. So fascinating to almost like, I wonder whether, it'd be cool to be like an anthropologist into the relationship there, just to observe how it all works, because it is fascinating when two cultures come together in this way. Let's talk about sort of the mission. So the mission is to advance iCIMS now into the European market. In France in particular, again, the stereotypical reputation is like, look, it's impossible to sell into France unless you're French. Also actually in France, also the reputation is very difficult for a French company to sell outside of France. How are you like handling that? Because you've got an EMEA remit now, Mickael. So how do you break through within the European and wider sector?
Yeah, I'm not concerning about that. I mean, I don't have any concern about the fact to sell iCIMS in France and everywhere in Europe, because I really think that today we have the best product capabilities. You know, so I'm doing my own onboarding since 4 months just to understand what is the difference between iCIMS and the market. And when I do the list of the capabilities, we have, I think, an unfair advantage in terms of capabilities. So I'm really enthusiastic about our go-to-market here in Europe. I think we have a huge ecosystem of partners, so about 200 partners working with us. It's great. You know, it's quite unique on the market, and we have something to do on the branding and the market awareness for iCIMS in Europe, for sure. But in the US, iCIMS is just number one. Okay, so 4,000 customers, 50% of the Fortune 100. So it's just big, you know. So we just need to do this market awareness and this branding work. But we will rely on the the customer base we have at EASYRECRUE. You know, we have 450 customers, mainly blue chips, working with some of the best brands in Europe, like LVMH, Sanofi, and so on. Mm-hmm. So we have these roots and this good base. So I think it will help a lot to organize our go-to-market. So I'm super confident and enthusiastic for that.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And just the final question really on the French HR tech scene. It seems like a really exciting space suddenly. I mean, maybe for people in France, has been the case for a little while, but I feel that basically the global consciousness of what is happening in France has really increased over the last 24 months or so. And everyone's like looking and say, wow, it's like lots of exciting stuff happening here. Can you explain what has been the driver for that? Mickael?
I don't know if I can explain it. I can just like you acknowledge it. There is a lot of company working in the human resources sector and in this business. The concern I see is that perhaps the market is going to be really fragmented because there is a lot of company working on niche area. But at the end, it's complicated, you know, to scale a business on a niche area on a small market like the French market. So it's super complicated, and it's something we saw at EASYRECRUE. So at one point, you need to go international if you really want to scale a business. That's why quite early in the life of the company, we went to Southern Europe, to UK, and to Dubai. Because I think this is the issue when you launch a business, but it's great to see this all this dynamism around our ecosystem.
Yeah, it is fantastic. Let's jump into a time machine, Mickael, because you've got a really interesting career history in the sense that it seems that you like immediately got into like startup like your own business straight away. Can you tell us like what your thought process was here? Were you always going to be the entrepreneur, or was there at some moment, you know, in some other alternative pipeline, it will be like Mickael at the chartered accountant somewhere? Was that ever a possibility?
No, I think so. Look, I did a business school, okay, in Lyon, and I launched my first company. But I was still a student when I launched my first company. You know, and we were in the kind of accelerator of the business school, and it was crazy. I was 23 years old, and I launched my first company with my first fundraising. So we raised about 300K for our first one, and for us it was just like incredible. You know, so it was my first venture. And before that, you know, at school you need to do some internship. So I did one in a big consulting company, which is Accenture. Mm-hmm. But I understood from the beginning it was not really done for me. It didn't fit for me because I really wanted to do things by myself or have my autonomy. And so, I understood. I mean, for me, it was a good journey because I learned a lot of things about the process and everything. And I learned that it was not done for me. So it was a good things to do that. And then I jumped in the entrepreneurship world and I launched my first company in 2007.
Yeah, that's amazing. What kind of insight would you say, like if you could meet a young Mickael, what kind of advice would you give people of that sort of era? Because I think young people coming into the world of work, I think are these days even more excited about potentially launching their own businesses. I think it's going to be more common than it even was in your case. What kind of insights can you sort of outline to them? What are the risks and rewards to going down this path?
Yeah, it's a good one. I would say to me, continue to believe in your dream. It's going to be hard, but keep pushing. Be resilient, and at the end it will work. But I think resilience is key. I mean, if you're not ready to take some risk and to understand that you're going to have 95% of your day will be to manage problems and will be to manage bad situations, and only 5% will be good outputs and the customer saying, okay, we're going to sign, or good people that we are going to hire, I don't know. But most of the time, it's just managing problem and tough situation. If you're not ready for that, it could be complicated. But if you're ready for that, just keep pushing, and at the end, you're going to have some result. But I think resilience is key.
Is there a way to develop resilience, Mickael, or do you believe this is a personal, like a characteristic you are born with?
I think you have that at the beginning a little bit, but it's something you need to develop. I think it's something you need to develop, and you develop it with the time when you see that there will be some result at the end. So I think it's important to have midterm objective and see that you are going to achieve that. There is always I don't know, but when you see something, I'm always showing to people when I do some training. Sorry, I just show you a kind of trend, but it's just saying that. I don't know if we see, but
yeah, we see it.
This is the beginning. This is the end. You go up, you go down, you go up. So it's a long journey, but at the end, there is a trend going up. Just think that it won't be an easy road. It will be, a lot of claim. This is something to have in mind. And once you have that in mind, you just accept that sometimes you go down and then you will go up again.
You know what, Mickael? Can you just raise that chart? Beautifully drawn, by the way.
No, it's not well done, but the idea is here. This is the starting point. You go up, then you go down, you come back, you go up. But the important is to see the trend that at the end you are going to wing up. But you just have to accept that it won't be,
it won't be a straight line.
Yeah, the idea is to have that, but it never happened. You always have some up and down. If you accept that, I think it's pretty okay. But you just need to accept that at the beginning.
Yeah, and another line that's super important in that line chart, Mickael, is the bottom line. So in other words, how long do you want to do your kind of review of the process? Because I think one of the big problems in any project or initiative is that we quit too early. We have an expectation. I see it all the time. Like in recruiting, obviously, there's lots of people now setting up businesses because it's been tough in the market, etc. It's like, okay, now is the moment, and they come to you for advice often, and it's like, I'm like, of course, go for it. These are good ideas. There's a similar journey I've made, so I cannot say don't do it. But then I notice, like they have to understand when their quit point is. Because if they're like thinking it's a 3 month, it's going to happen. No, you need to have a longer line, because you have to be aware these dips are going to be like this. And in an environment where you cannot predict, those dips might actually be more severe than you expect, and there will be more like energy this way. So you have to have the longevity to do it. Which is, that's probably the only entrepreneurial insight that I can offer anybody. It's like when you set your goal, you have to give yourself enough time, almost to fail enough times, because you're gonna, but you can't like do it. You can't basically set it on the first time you fail, because you're gonna just finish it. You might as well not start.
Yeah, no, I agree. So it took us 7 years to get where we've been with EASYRECRUE, and we went from a lot of process, a lot of deception, but a lot of upside too. And the idea has changed a lot during the process too. The product at the end has nothing to see with the product at the beginning. There's a value proposition, positioning. So it's a running process. At one point, you need to like the journey too. I mean, you don't. I mean, if I had an advice to give to entrepreneurs, is not to think about the end of the process. Because if they just think about that, they are not going to enjoy the journey. So they need to enjoy the journey too, enjoy recruiting people, enjoy meeting customer, enjoy learning, So you need to like what you do, because if you don't, it could be an issue. Yeah.
Intrinsic motivation, isn't that something some thought leader thinks of use that term, but I think it's a super competitive advantage for an entrepreneur or anybody in business, because if you're like intrinsically motivated, it means you can go longer, and the resilience is almost naturally there because you literally enjoy it. Yeah. So you would do this in any case. Very interesting, Mickael. Let's talk about like leadership. Like you've always been the guy in charge when you set up the business, and you set up like EASYRECRUE after your first business. Like you're always the leader of it. Can you tell us a little bit about leadership values, and what have you learned by being a leader that's important for a young person coming in or someone who's stepping into a leadership position right now?
Yeah, I think that my style has really evolved with the time. When I remember my first company, I was 23 years old, and I think I had at the time a kind of authority or problem, not authority, but credibility, and I just wanted to check everything, to be behind everybody, to understand everything. And I think it was counterproductive, because when you hire good people, you need to let them do what they're supposed to do and give them some autonomy. This is something I've learned a lot. And giving autonomy to people, it's hard, because it could be counter natural, So on my side, it was not natural, but I came to that, and now it's a part of my leadership style, and sometimes too much. People tell me, okay, we need more focus from you just to tell us what is the word and etc. But I think something I try to work on, giving people more autonomy and let them doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, and how do you learn to build that? I mean, was there a moment where you realized that you needed to take a little step back from these micro decisions and say, this guy's got, or this person has got to, just, even if they go down a route which I may not have a 100% backing on, that's the reason why they're in the job, so let them do the job. Was there a moment in your kind of leadership career where this suddenly became like, right, now I get it?
I think I did my own inspection between my first venture and my second one. When I sold my first company, I took some time for me and just to understand what I did well, what I didn't did well, and I just realized that regarding people and management, I had a lot to learn and a lot of way of improvement. And when I started my new venture, EASYRECRUE, I tried to start differently, not to do the same stuff, So it was really a tipping point, when I started EASYRECRUE. And after that, I think it's a kind of learning curve, and you always have things to learn. Something I've done at EASYRECRUE, and I'm still doing that, is working with an executive coach. I think it's super important to have someone which is in your back, not working in the company, not an advisor, not a board member, but someone whose job is to challenge you and give you some inputs regarding the best way to manage people, etc. So this is something I have invested in for the last 4 years. It's some time, some money, but I think it's super important to improve yourself.
That's fascinating. I think, we care about personal development a lot, and a lot of CEOs, I think, have this view. Yes, of course, we need to invest in our staff, but they may never think we need to invest in yourself. You're also a staff member, also a contributor to the company. And you're saying that you actually have an exec coach outside of the structure of the business. This is an individual that essentially can operate with a very objective view as to how to support you to develop as a CEO, as an MD, as a leader of a business.
Yeah, correct. So yeah, exactly. So and yeah, it's super useful. Honestly, I try to see him twice a month. So we do good sessions, and I just come with all the things I have in mind, all the things I want to organize, and we just challenge everything, and it helps a lot. It's a really good discussion, and as he does that with other leader and other exec, I think he has a good view of what is the best way to do or one way to do. So I think, for me, it has been super useful, and I still see some CEOs saying, okay, I don't have time to learn, to train, to take, but I think it's not a good option. I think at the end you're gonna. I think it's not a good option to not take this time. So I think it's a good investment to have some time just to learn, to do a step back, to take some time to think, and not being only in the execution, and answering email. I don't know. I think it's not the best way to do.
Well, this is it. I think one thing we've learned during this pandemic is that if you're completely 100% maximum capacity all the time, you will have no ability to be agile or to new change or to take advantage of opportunity, because there is literally no percent that is flexible. So I think the new business paradigm is to build in this resilience, build in the redundant capacity, if that's the word we can use, to say you actually need to create 20% space where there is nothing. You're going to deliberately not fill it with things, because you need to have that empty space for new ideas to emerge, for personal development to happen, for new opportunities to suddenly occur. right? Like Isaac Newton sitting underneath the tree. He wasn't like trying to work on anything. He was sitting underneath the tree. The apple hit him on the head, and suddenly he came up with a revelation. So
this is a thing. You know, I've heard about the new book of the CEO of Netflix, and I think this is one of the first companies that put in place unlimited holidays. And it says that most of the biggest advance idea for Netflix came from people during their holidays. Their unlimited holiday, because they just have free time and they were in a good shape, in a good mind to think about differently, and they always come back with fresh and new ideas. So I think it's important, you know, to not being overwhelmed all the time.
Can you systematize that across a company, Mickael, and is it a good idea?
The unlimited holidays?
No, the idea of creating space. So for instance, like this may be a personal responsibility. So you might say, right, for me, I'm going to do this. But do you think it's a good idea to actually create the culture to say, you know what, this is going to happen for everybody? What are your thoughts on this?
I think so. I think that I think that people during their business week, they should have some time to think. Not only execute, answer email, answer call, doing meeting, I don't know, just some time to think about. So I think it's key, yeah.
Okay, this actually now links to the next topic, which is how do we maintain sort of the culture and innovation and, you know, sense of inspiration in a context where we are physically distributed. One of the big conversations it seems that's happening is that, you know what, yes, you can do the job like operationally remote, but what may be missing is the chance meeting, which sparks the creativity, which does all of this stuff, which sometimes is very important depending on what, you know, where you're at in your journey. What do you think of that, Mickael? Is there a way to engineer that serendipity, or is it a straight trade-off to say, you know what, sure, remote is going to be this way, but we're going to concede a little bit of the creativity as a result?
Yeah, I think it's a tough situation. I mean, to be creative, to work as a group, as a team, to do brainstorming on Zoom, I think is not the best format, to be honest. So we tried. We've had some results, but it's not working as we would like. So I think that we would have to find a way to conciliate the life on Zoom and on or remote and the life on site. And we just need to avoid a situation where we ask the people to come again to the work. But let's say we're going to have 50% of the team on site, 50% of the team on Zoom, and everybody on Zoom. And then we're going to have people on site, which are behind the laptop doing some meetings all day long and just going back to home. And so I think we just need to avoid this situation and find a kind of a balance between, so when you are working from home, you are doing your meeting and you are working remotely with virtual tools. And when you are on site, you have another day. Your work is just different. You just sit down, you just discuss with colleagues, just to coffee. Perhaps you don't have your laptop. When you come outside, you don't have your laptop because you just have to speak with people. Perhaps we have to imagine this kind of new rules when you're on site.
That's, you know what, you just said something that may be a new rule. It's like you turn up without a laptop, similar to eating lunch without the mobile phone, always looking at, you know, because there's no point in you zooming into a screen when you're next to somebody. Defeats the point. So turn up to work without a laptop. How's that for an idea, folks? But maybe required, right? I don't know whether you read that post by Elad Gil that I put into the newsletter last week, but it was really quite an interesting breakdown as to the formats of remote. So I like the fact he added more nuance to the idea of remote, because there's not one style. And he divided it into two broad categories, which is one, individual choice. Like there's no structure. Anybody can just turn up whenever you want. That's totally cool. The facility is available. The second idea is it is in the calendar. So you say, actually, Monday to Thursday, work from home, Friday, everyone's in. And then, you know, when everyone's in, suddenly everyone's there, right? So you can have that type of thing. But maybe these are like emerging models as to how remote works. It's not just to say, oh, this is a hybrid, because both of them are hybrid. But there's like additional like model within the hybrid school. And I thought that's actually smart, because you can imagine them to be two very different experiences if it's entirely the choice of the individual. And actually, you know, there is a day you're in the office.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that one important point is to be sure that we don't enter in a situation where we force people to work remotely. we saw some example of companies saying, okay, no, we shift to a remote organization. We don't have any office anymore. People can't come back to the office. And I think it's not great for people because they didn't sign for that. And plus they don't want that. And they're going to resign because it's not what they're looking for. So there is a lot of companies that manage to be remote company, but they did that from the beginning.
Yep.
Like Notion or GitLab, I don't know. So they did that from the beginning. But you can't force people to do that. So I think that an hybrid organization is a good way to do, and just respect what people want to do. And if there is some folks that want to come to the office 5 days a week because they can't work from home, we need to respect that and find a solution to let them going to the office if possible.
That's right. And we also need to be aware that a home is a different place for different people, right? I mean, sometimes people are not in a controlled environment, particularly if you have kids, family, or a complicated life in that you might be a young person living in a flat share, for instance. I cannot imagine a worse circumstance if suddenly there's 5 people also all working from home and they're like all in the same lounge. That's like no good. So work from home really, there is like an economic strata there, and there's also a life journey strata. So it probably is optimal for someone who is already, let's say, have their own control of their environment. They have their own property, let's say, and they can control that. But for a younger person, early entry career, no bueno. Okay, let's talk about sort of the product in terms of where you think it's going to go. So we're in home now with iCIMS. I agree, it's got some outstanding sort of capabilities. What exciting things do you expect to be able to say to the market for this year, Mickael, that's happening that you're aware of? Obviously, nothing confidential can be exposed, but what do you think people can expect, customers and prospects of that are buying this software?
Yeah, so first, I mean, iCIMS did 3 acquisitions last year. So Opening.io in Dublin, EASYRECRUE for video capabilities, and iTrue. I don't know if you heard about iTrue, but just to give the voice to employee and to accelerate the engagement of candidates and to provide them a good picture of the company. So first, we need to integrate all those new capabilities to the core product, because today there is some API. So during the next 3 days, we're going to have everything integrated in one core product. So this is big because I don't know other provider able to propose its video capabilities as a core product. So they rely on partnership with our previous competitor, but they don't have that in the core. So I think this is the first big step. I think another important point is it's about collaboration. So to support decentralized workforce, we need more collaboration, and we're investing a lot with Microsoft Teams. We have a strong partnership with them, and Microsoft Teams is integrated within iCIMS. So then talent acquisition people can work as a team through Microsoft Teams, directly integrated to the ATS, to the CRM. So I think this is a big step, and everything. We were doing a lot of investment on the mobile hiring. It's key, again, because this is a decentralized workforce. We have some people that are not working with the laptop anymore, just working with their phone because they're on the ground, and we need to support them too. So this is some aspects that I can talk about. And another aspect we are starting to invest a bit more is about advanced talent. Our baseline is to attract, engage, hire, and advance the best talent. Right. I think we're super strong already to attract and hire the best people. And I think once we are here, we can really support companies to advance the people and to work on internal mobility, career paths, and so there is something to do there. So this is something we have in mind.
Well, absolutely, and you guys actually had produced you had an interest in internal mobility for a long period, actually. So very interesting to see that elevating as a priority for all of these HR tech businesses. I think previously very much neglected as a category. But again, if anything, COVID-19 has taught us is that we do a terrible job of moving people around. We don't know enough information about our own staff. We have separate siloed bits of information, performance data not connected to assessment data. It's like a complete mess. So this should be a really exciting emerging category.
I think so. Also
Yeah.
working on that. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, let's look at the wider market outside of iCIMS and EasyRecruit, Mickael. I always want to sort of get one of the jobs of a leader of a business is to look outside, right? Get your head up and take a look what's happening around the corner. What do you think about things like AR, VR? We know that I think I read a post the other day to say Facebook are going to they've got 10,000 engineers apparently working on Oculus because they realize that Apple's going to kill them at some point. So they're going to dive into this AR, VR space. And obviously there's some very interesting HR implications for this because in a remote world, suddenly is it more immersive to work in this digital space? What are your thoughts on the AR, VR space? And are we going to see like a significant implementation in the HR tech world?
Honestly, I think that on the paper it works. You say, okay, there is a link between both areas. So on the paper it works. I think that we are still quite far from that. When I speak with customers, they are still looking for a good ATS and a good CRM, because sometimes they're just working with bad product or working on Excel or Outlook, I don't know. So I think there is a gap. So we're going to have some more advanced company doing some POC and putting some stuff around that. But I think we have 5 to 10 years before getting there. I think so. This is my feeling.
I think you're right. I mean, again, we need to understand that new companies, when they emerge, they're not going to have a brilliant ATS. They're going to start with a spreadsheet. So there's a journey. They're always going to want this type of product. And yeah, the hardware is not there, right, for the AR, VR experience. Although I have to say, having got an Oculus Rift for whatever reason last year, I can tell you it's like one of the best purchases that I've made because I've tried to do meetings in there. It was a total failure because we couldn't navigate through the coffee table. It was like we couldn't do it. But it's immersive. So in other words, you're not looking at just the screen and looking at distracted. It's like you're in it. So I wonder whether there is going to be some interesting applications there. Another potential application, super interesting, online gaming. One of the ways in which we've potentially seen online collaboration work with people that you haven't met, never met, is actually participate in an online world. Not AR, VR, you're still looking at a screen, but you're actually immersed in it. And I was really attracted to a company that had Zoom fatigue. And instead of doing meetings in Zoom because they had fatigue, they said, look, we all play Red Dead Redemption. Why don't we actually meet there? Because there's space on the game where you can just adopt your avatar and literally have conversations on there. And they do their meetings in the game. Yeah, what are your thoughts? Is it a gimmick or do you think there's something there?
No, I really believe in the gaming for the talent acquisition. I mean, I think that we can't propose anymore to the talent and particularly to the new generation to fill some psycho assessments during 30 minutes, 100 questions, really boring. I think that they don't want to do that anymore. Okay, so I think it was the previous one. So I think we can't propose that anymore. So I think there is a wide space for gaming and things more funny, where you can still learn a lot of things, and where candidate can still learn a lot of things, but in a funniest way. So I think this is a good wide space in the talent acquisition, and there's already a few providers working on that. And I really believe in this area.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of interesting skills that you can pick up, like mental acuity, your ability to learn, your collaboration potentially. You can assess lots of interesting things.
It's just more fun, and candidates will prefer to do that. And I think it could be a good aspect for employer branding. If you have a choice to apply for a company, and on one side you need to fill 100. Question doing 30 minutes quick test, and on the other side you're going to have a game on your iPhone, then there was something more compelling. So I think it's a good way for a company to attract candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. And we shouldn't underestimate all of the assessment software that's there. We have to understand the psychology of the candidate as they go into it, because if they become demotivated or it's a stress situation for them, this is actually not an accurate representation of how this person might potentially perform in the job. So, the structure of the assessment actually would prejudice this. Lots of news happening about non-fungible tokens and, stuff being sold, like JPEGs being sold for $69 million, etc. What are your thoughts on this? Is this the brave new world in terms of how people might be able to monetize their digital effort, Mickael?
It could be. I mean, it's it's a long discussion. I think it's a really long discussion. I think that we are at really, really beginning of something for sure. But I see a link between blockchain and skills. To certify skills, to get approved. I see something there because it's so complicated to know what are the skills of someone and to get certified. I think that the blockchain could have a good input there. But I don't see the answer. But I think there is something there. So I think this is something we should look at because there is definitely a link there.
Yeah, it's a fascinating space, and I think there's obviously it's an insane sort of. We've seen some insane bubbles already this year with some stocks going crazy, Bitcoin obviously going nuts, NFTs now becoming the latest thing that people are throwing money at. So yeah, I think the accusations of it being a bubble may be accurate, but at the same time, the idea that you have a immutable system of record. That yes, this person can absolutely perform these skills. There's no doubt that that's the case. Then that changes how you assess that person because
I believe in that, and I think that the future of work is not about a job. It's about mission, and it's about the skills you have, and your skills are going to evolve. So it's not about what you did in the past. It's about the skill set you have today. I think this is what we are going to sell tomorrow as an individual and contributor. So people are not going to look again at your CV and your track record, just going to see at the skills you have. And if we have a way to certify these skills, I think it will help, in this process. So I think there was something there.
That's an interesting perspective, Mickael. It kind of leads us to figure out how exactly do we develop software to cater for a world that is not job focused, but actually skills focused. Because if we think about things like ATSs, job boards, anything that is related to HR tech, more or less, it is actually created around a job. So are we looking at like a fundamental redesign of how software might work in this future world that we kind of get a glimpse of right now?
I think we're going to have to. I think so, because even people, they're not looking, they won't looking anymore for job, but more for mission or project, or, and they can support a specific project, but they don't see themselves in the same job. Or they won't see themselves in the same job during 5 years or 10, as they used to do previously. So I think the career are going to evolve, and the way to attract people and to evolve them is supposed to evolve too, to match this trend.
And also, it's not even a sequential thing anymore, right? Like people might be able to parallel process a couple of jobs because, hey, maybe I've spare capacity on a Sunday to do 3 hours worth of this, but that 3 hours may be monetizable because, you have these core skills that are absolutely like, for instance, right now, I need someone to visualize my LinkedIn connections, right? Like, why doesn't LinkedIn give me this information? It just allows you to download the CSV. It's just a massive thing. But I can't tell you, basically the distribution of my network graph looks like this. But anyways, I want to pay someone to do that. It's probably a couple of hours worth of work. But how do I pay him if he's like contractually obliged not to do it because he's locked into an employer and he can't trade elsewhere? So there's even questions about employment contracts and how do we modulate them to ideally cater for someone who potentially wants to work with multiple revenue options.
Yeah, this is everything about the gig economy. So this is something that is under structuration, and the tools have to follow this trend. And we're going to work on this aspect too, for sure. But this is something which is going to happen really quickly, for sure.
Okay, we're coming to the end of the time, Mickael, but I do want to ask you one final question on the gig economy, because as you mentioned it, wasn't there some news to say LinkedIn were going to kind of create some product to challenge Upwork or something of this type? And it was okay, because LinkedIn obviously is also another one that's built around the idea of permanent workers, right? But we've seen the rise of gig economy, of people like doing multiple stuff. They're going to launch something apparently that is a competitor to Upwork. What do you think of that as a product, and how does it influence iCIMS roadmap in any way?
So yeah, I think I don't have enough visibility yet on the iCIMS roadmap and the full picture, because I'm here only since a few months. But I think that for LinkedIn, I think it's a good move. They're in a good space to do that, for sure, because they have the network, they have the skills of the people, they have the customers. So, they have everything to run this business. So I think it's a good idea.
It'll be exciting to see what they do. I think their challenge is they're so big. Like, can they actually execute? But yeah, they've got obviously the data and the reach and the distribution and so on. Okay, we're coming to the end. I've just realized we've got a question coming in from Veronica. So let's ask this question here. She said, okay, do you think with a more agile distributed leadership style, people could prove their potential, or is it more risky for them? So I think what Veronica is saying, okay, we need to be more delegative. We need to, obviously, we're physically not at desk and looking at people in terms of work, micromanagement out the window. What is the potential for the candidate and potential for the employee and the risk for that person?
Yeah, I think that the good thing is that the micromanager and people, I mean, they don't have their place in this new world. And I think it's good because, it's no place for another kind of management. So I think it's a good point. And I think the situation is a really good opportunity for talents. I mean, they have the ability to light, to portray themselves in another way. So I think it's a huge area of opportunity for talented people to develop themselves and to propose new ideas, because there is so much to propose now. I mean, there is a way. So everything is to be redesigned. So a lot of ideas has to come, and those ideas has to come from people. So there is a lot of opportunity for people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And the message we have for people right now is to say, you've got to grasp the opportunity. Like, don't wait for the world to change. You've got to really have confidence in yourself and push
propose things. Yeah, because HRD are looking for new ideas. They're looking for new ideas to handle the situation, and the new ideas can come from the ground and from the team. So all the ideas are really welcome at the moment.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, Mickael, we're coming to the end of the show. So the final question for you is, what busy MD activities are you going to be doing after you finish this call? What's happening for the rest of the day, Mickael?
My day generally starts about 2 p.m. I mean, it starts earlier, but I have a lot of meetings from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. because it's US time. So in the afternoon, I'm a bit back to back with a lot of internal meetings and so on.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let me leave you to have at least a decent lunch and a bit of a break before you get into the Zoom marathon.
Yeah, so this is something important for me. I never lunch inside of my PC. I always take 1 hour and so on to take a lunch. I think it's important. So,
and this is the French. Actually, one thing everyone needs to learn from the French working culture is exactly this. We need the French lunch, folks. Okay, Mickael, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure seeing you. This is Founders Focus. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll be back with another series of these. We've got a load of MD, CEOs, and founders lined up. They're excited to be part of it. I think we learned so much from having conversations with leaders like you, Mickael.
And I will send you the graph.
Please do. I think we should frame this one. Okay, Mickael, you have a good lunch, sir.
Thank you. You too, and see you soon.
Okay, folks, I hope you've enjoyed that end of the broadcast. Follow the channel if you want to see more of Founders Focus. I hope you're enjoying the series. I'm learning a huge amount about it. Okay, till next time, folks.